All right, everyone, welcome to It's a Journey to Sophisticated Segmentation. This is how GoDaddy went from messy lists to campaign excellence. My name is Will Devlin. I'm the VP of Marketing at MessageGears. I'll be joined here in a second by Tim Roush, who is the Senior Technical Product Manager at GoDaddy. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of GoDaddy's marketing campaign processes, including some roadblocks and limitations that their team was experiencing and how many of you are likely familiar with. So we're going to cover how GoDaddy is creating a cohesive campaign audience experience in minutes, enabling a more rapid time to market, empowering team members with code-free solutions, and executing more experimentation than ever before. We're going to have some time at the end for questions and answers, and as you think of questions, you can toss them in here in the questions section, and we'll select a few to cover live, and we will make sure to follow up with the rest after the fact. So I'm going to join here live, and Tim, ask you to join the stage as well.
Hey,
Hey, Tim,
Will.
how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for joining. Greatly appreciate it. So let's start here by just give everybody an overview of your role at GoDaddy and what you're overseeing and sort of the scope and what team you're on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm in our marketing team. I'm the product manager of our marketing data platform. So as we think about how we use data to empower our marketers, website marketing, email marketing primarily, the data that they need to be able to communicate with customers comes from the platform that I manage.
Perfect. Great. So let's start off here by we're kind of telling a little bit of a before and after story, right? So let's start with having you give us an overview of GoDaddy's previous process as it relates to campaigns and why it was so limiting. But you can broaden it out to other areas of the business, but particularly in campaigns. Let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been on a bit of a stack transformation journey really for the last, I'd say, 3 years or so, largely pertaining to how we interact with our customers via email and on our website. And from a data perspective, the data that empowers us to do that has been on its own unique journey. So really our goal, the vision of a data platform is to empower your business partners like marketers to create value with your data. And that can take many forms, from marketing audiences to just understanding your customer demographics better to creating unique insights of data that they can share with other people. And so our ability to do that has gone from, I would say, a much more limited capacity to now we're really experiencing what I would call a data renaissance with how our marketers and business partners are able to interact with the data. So in telling the story of that journey, I like to look at it through the lens of these three different obstacles and how we've approached those obstacles. So the obstacles are access, understanding, and then portability. And so when we think about the obstacle of data access, in a lot of environments, you've got data that's spread all over the place. You've got many different data origin systems, or what we call producers, creating their own unique authoritative data sets spread across all over your ecosystem, and getting it into one place, that alone is quite a journey. But if you assume that, okay, let's say we have a functioning, call it data lake, data warehouse, whatever it may be, a single point of access, even then you've got a lot of barriers between marketers and creating that value. So you've got things like, a lot of the times marketers aren't going to be given, direct access to query your database. That's not typically something that admins want to be managing. You've got maybe dozens or hundreds of marketers. You want to be handling individual permissions for every single person. And let's say even then, like if you're able to get the data together and get it, manage the access, oftentimes when you're dealing with a marketing platform, like say an email platform, there's replication involved, right? So perhaps I have my data lake or my data warehouse here. I've got my email management system there. I have to replicate data from here to there on some kind of a basis, and how you replicate that data kind of dictates what you can do with it. So as we're looking at just this sort of challenge of access and what we can do with our data, one of the things that's really appealing to us about how MessageGears works is that it actually lives natively in our data lake right next to the data. So that eliminates the need for replication, which is just a whole challenge of data management in and of itself. So that's really appealing, right? We can give users a tool. Instead of managing individual database access, we can give them a tool. That tool sits right next to our database. And now they can start exploring the data and understanding it without that barrier of just how do I get to the data. So right off the bat, that's been really beneficial. We've been able to open up access to the data to dozens and dozens of partners and teams across the company who've never even seen what our data looks like before because they've never even been able to get access to it. So just right off the bat, that's been one really good advantage for us.
When we talk to different, different brands, different customers of ours, or different, just brands out in the field, I mean, the replication is such a limitation that marketers don't necessarily understand as a limitation. I think a lot of the times, like they don't necessarily understand or even care at times where their data is coming from. They just know they need data in there, and so it's relying typically on your teams to get them access to that, and it can certainly open up a world of possibilities when that happens. But in terms of governance and accuracy and speed of getting that data, certainly the native approach. On its face for a lot of brands is just what you said. It opens up a lot of possibilities and makes things a lot smoother.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that I've learned to think about in this role, and as we're thinking about your data journey, is what we call data supply chain. So, what is the path that data takes from origination to consumption and being used by, marketers or whomever to interact with customers? And the longer that supply chain is, right, the more hops, the more replications, the more transformations and all that, each point of touch represents a potential point of loss or a failure of error, things like that. So the more you can reduce that data supply chain, the more likely you are to have really high quality data for your partners to work with. And so having that residency with MessageGears right next to our data lake gives us a shorter supply chain, easier to manage, better quality data to work with.
So how does that enable then sort of a new way of working, not just, again, like there's examples for marketing, right? I would assume some advanced segmentation capabilities or being able to build campaigns using, again, having that shorter supply chain. But what are, how has it expanded a way of working across the org as well?
Yeah, so that in and of itself, that's a good advantage, but that's really only the first step in the journey. That gets to this next barrier of a real mature data, environment, which is understanding. So now that marketers can access the data, the next thing they need to be able to do is understand it, and that's just a whole big spectrum of, okay, I can see this data. What does it mean? And one of the things that you'll probably think about as a marketer who's stepping into a data ecosystem for the first time is how do I use this data? How do I join tables together? How do I get at what I'm looking for? Oftentimes I've seen where in the spectrum of sort of data maturity at a company, you have a reliance on your business partners to be able to write SQL. I mean, this is such a common thing for folks to have to do because that's the only tool that they're given to interact with the data is, well, can you write a SQL query? And your ability to discover and create value out of your data is largely dependent on your ability to write a query to get it. And so, that's something where we're trying to build an ecosystem that removes the requirement for you or a marketer to know how to write SQL for you to be able to get into the data and create value with it. So, we've got a couple of folks on our team who are, the SQL masters. They can build something for you. We call them base audiences, which is, in MessageGears, when you're thinking about segment, we think about it as kind of like a funnel. So I can build these different shaped funnels of our customers and then hand them to you. And then you as a marketer, without knowing any SQL, you can start to, narrow that funnel down to your target audience, and create a unique insight of, hey, I've learned based on my filter criteria and how the numbers, so like I've learned that this percentage of customers acts this way and this percentage act that way. So, by using segment, it really helps us remove that barrier of, I don't know how to write SQL, to, hey, I can get in and start working with my data and understanding my customers. That's been tremendously advantageous. So, we started with access. MessageGears helps us access our data. Now, by using segment, we can actually give people the ability to break down and understand the data without writing SQL. That is such a major advantage. And then out of that, blessing and a curse, right? People start asking questions about the data, like, hey, what does this mean? Or I see these numbers and they look odd and all that kind of thing. And that's really causing this really healthy conversation across our company about things like data governance, right? And data authoritativeness. Hey, what's the best way for me to infer or derive, certain attributes about customers? We want to make sure that we're creating good, clear, central, authoritative signals for our customers to use. So when you're looking at something like, what's the lifetime value of a customer? You don't have to derive that every time you want to use it. How do we create, high quality, centralized insights, we call them, about our customers that are reusable across people who might want to use it? And then to sort of supplement that, how do we create a robust data governance and dictionary process that helps you or anybody who wants to use the data go look up, hey, what does this thing mean? How are we as a company defining lifetime value of a customer? How is it built behind the scenes? Like, what sources are we pulling from? But really, I want to use this in, one of my audience criteria. Like, how does this field get defined? And what's really powerful about that, now that we've got this sort of, everybody's in there looking at the data and exploring it and asking questions about it, we're creating these consistent definitions of what lifetime value means across everybody. So in our old pattern, if you'll let me reminisce for a moment, I'm a marketer and I want to send an email, let's say. I know roughly who it is I want to talk to, and I'm going to describe that audience. Well, the first step in that journey is I need to understand the size of that opportunity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the semantic definition of my audience down in a ticket. I'm going to hand that to a BA team. Now they're going to go and they're going to look at a data set over here that they have access to, and they're going to take my criteria and try to write a query that they think matches the words that I wrote down of who I'm trying to target. Right? So they're gonna try to piece that together, and then they're gonna hand it to me and say, okay, I think I built your audience for you. It's this big, based on calculations, like it's this much of an opportunity. I say, oh, cool, that's great. I think I want to send them an email. Now what I have to do is take that same semantic definition and hand it to our email operations team. Say, hey, actually talk to these people. Well, guess what? Like we talked about earlier, oftentimes data in an email management system requires replication. They have to come into their system now, take the words that I wrote, and they have to say, how do I build that audience in this system with different shaped data and replicated data? And guess what? A lot of the times, those two things, they may not match, right? What your BA team built may not match what your email ops team built, because they're dealing with different data sets of different shapes, and they're trying to figure out, when you say lifetime value, do you include products that have been canceled, right? Like something like that. And they have to figure out what they think lifetime value might mean in their data. And guess what? You build that audience for the email, you send it, and you're like, wow, these numbers don't match. There's a delta between what BA says and what email says, and how do I figure out that gap? So fast forward to today's world. Not only can I authoritatively understand how to build this single view of the audience that I want using governed centralized metrics like lifetime value, I don't need to be submitting a ticket to our BA team. That might take a week or 2 weeks for them to even answer that question for me. And then I submit a ticket to the email team, and it might take them a week or 2 weeks to go actually build that audience. So that process might be 2 to 4 weeks of business time before I've operationalized this audience I want to talk to. Now, with MessageGears and with segmentation, we can just, as a marketer, I can go into one of those big funnels I described, one of those base audiences. I can narrow it down by the fields that are made available to me. I can target those people. I can see the size of the audience that I'm talking about. I can see if it's worth pursuing. We've actually built some integrations into tools like Tableau that says, hey, take this target group of customers and run some advanced analytics on it and really tell me who's in here and what kinds of behaviors they have and all that good stuff. So me as a marketer, I can do this behavior within minutes instead of weeks to understand, hey, what's the opportunity for me to pursue? And then even better, I can take that audience that I've created and hand that to our email operations team and say, email these people. And so not only do they not have to try to recreate that in their own data, but we've reduced or virtually eliminated the gap between analytics and email operations. It's the same consistent group of customers now. So it's faster, it's more consistent, it's using well-defined, centrally governed terms, so we're all starting to speak the same language. So that ability of me understanding the data lets me build things with it and lets us all start to become a lot more consistent with how we're using it and how we're defining it.
That's such a cool, it's just a cool transition, right? I mean, I know just as being a marketer, I want to get my hands in there and play around with it, and having to wait a week to understand the opportunity and then having to wait another week or longer to act on that opportunity. It's an eternity for, especially in today's world, right? And so if I can get in there and start playing around with different parameters and find out the opportunity size and maybe continue to tweak it in minutes versus weeks is a huge just efficiency gain in general there. So I would imagine then, now that your teams or the marketing teams have this better understanding of their customers, there's more efficiencies, they're now wondering what they can do with this, right? Like, what can I do with this? You mentioned um, access is important, and the understanding of the customers. Now it's like, what do we do with that? I think the third thing you said was portability. So now that they have these audiences that they can create, or these segments that they can create, and they know what to do with them, what do they do with that data?
Oh yeah, and this is where we're starting to really fire up our imaginations. So our initial path of what we were looking at, success being is, okay, can we integrate that audience that the marketer themselves built with the email platform to send to those customers? And that's a great value add for us. But really, that's just the beginning. So I mentioned we're able to now take that data, ship it into more advanced analytics systems for us to do, our computations on. We're exploring some of the native marketing integrations that MessageGears offers, the API integrations to these other marketing platforms that we can now send data directly to. So, the ability for marketers to not just explore and understand the data, but to create it and package it out to, anything that can consume an API call or a CSV, like that creates just such an efficiency for us to not to have to go, custom build pipelines and API integrations ourselves. Like, the marketers are now a lot more empowered to fuel the data into the systems that they're then using to talk to their customers without all this, again, hey, I want to be able to send data to, ad platform Z, right? Well, okay, in the old world, we're going to have to figure out how do we build a data pipeline to that, and how do we, move the data along, all the engineering work that comes with building that kind of infrastructure. Well, a lot of the times now we're able to simply say, hey, create a CSV file, drop it here, this system picks it up, and away it goes. Or, we're starting to explore leveraging the built-in integrations that MessageGears offers. So the ability to move that data to where we need it now, that's really what we're seeing as sort of this next frontier of like, okay, now that we've got this hygiene in MessageGears of exploring and understanding data, what can we do with it? And we're just starting to tap into that value.
You also mentioned earlier that with these sort of shared understanding or shared definitions around the org now, Other teams are trying to get involved in understanding or diving even deeper into a particular audience or particular, trait or something like that. What are some other examples how having this sort of warehouse connected or data native, whatever you want to call that, right? But what are some other advantages beyond just the marketing team getting their hands on it that you've seen within GoDaddy?
Yeah, I mean, it's the marketing aspect of it is certainly compelling because that's where we're, reaching customers and engaging with them and, reducing our time to market. But the other sort of big shift that we're seeing is around just our ability to understand our customers and their demographics. And so, where as a marketer, I used to need to go, ask my BA team to help, build this data set. Well, BA is also seeing like, hey, you've got these tools that help you, get in there and build these unique segments and understand how customers break down. We want to access that too, so that we can do those patterns faster as well. And so you've got other teams across the company who, what they're doing, how they're engaging with customers, yeah, it may not necessarily be in a marketing capacity, but they still need to understand their demographics. They still need to understand the size and the makeup of their customers that they're trying to target for them to know how to communicate with them effectively. And so MessageGears and Segment in the hands of marketers, yes, it's great because it empowers our marketing supply chain and reduces our time to market. That's really good. But it's also going into the hands of our other teams along with our analytics partners to say, hey, here's a single place where you can create these views and demographic breakdowns of your customers to understand their behaviors and how you can understand them and target them more efficiently too, whether or not it's for marketing purposes. So I'd say, it's really helped us gain a better tooling and a better lens into understanding who our customers are and how do they break down.
Awesome. We have a couple questions coming in, and we have a few minutes here at the end here for questions. So we'll start kicking into them. What are the first one here? What are some future plans based on all of this progress? Like what's next on this, like
Yeah.
related to data activation?
So when you think about the sort of data supply chain for marketing enablement that I mentioned, it's so far somewhat single channel focused, right? I'm creating a path towards email enablement. Well, what we want to be able to do is share that across all of our different channels, including how we communicate on the website. So we want to really try to create consistency between how we're talking to customers on the website versus in email versus our other mediums as well. A big part of that is our ability to understand customers and your sort of state in time right now in real time. So as customers are interacting with us on the website with their products in real time, we want to be able to understand their audience, how they fit into different audiences and how we should change our communication with them as they're taking those interactions. So the portability of the audiences we're creating across our different channels is something we're starting to spread, but also how do we build systems that can evaluate you as a customer, not just the breadth of a particular audience, but you as a customer and how we should engage with you in real time. That's I would say really the next big frontier for us.
That's fascinating. Another question here: How do you get buy-in to implement this type of thing? I mean, I know there's probably a lot of different teams that are just sort of adding on to this my own, but like there's probably different teams that need to be involved, especially if you're giving marketers access to a data lake or a data warehouse directly. So what did that process look like?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. For as good as it sounds now as I'm talking to you about it, there's a lot of points throughout the process of getting started where folks might be a little bit hesitant. Especially when you're telling a marketer, hey, in the old way of working, you just have to come up with words and you'll have people go and build that audience for you. And when you tell them, I'm actually going to ask you to go in and build it yourself, they think of those barriers that I talked about. I don't know how to write SQL. I don't understand the different data sources that we have across the company. Like, you're asking me as a consumer to start to interact with the producers of the data and to understand what it means. And so, understandably so, like, this is a big paradigm shift in how people operate. So, getting the buy-in that, hey, it's good for us to build stronger ties, stronger relationships between data consumers and the producers that they're dependent on. It's good for us to better understand each other. Consumers to understand, hey, where's my data coming from? How can I trust that it's good quality data, and how can I understand it better? But also as producers, you benefit from understanding, hey, here's how my users are using my data. It helps you, build perhaps better views of that data, or make sure that you're enforcing the right aspects of quality of that data. So it's a paradigm shift. It really is. And each point of change, across that process is uncomfortable. We have to build processes and systems that support that change. But the benefit is that, like I said, as we're seeing that faster time to market, that's starting to encourage other teams to say, okay, I get what I have to do. I get that I, as a marketer, I have to become a little bit more versed in the conversation of talking to data producers. But if I do that, my time to campaign market goes from 4 weeks to 2 days. And that benefit of, hey, you can get to your customers faster, you can be a lot more flexible, a lot more autonomous with how you build your segments and how you experiment on those customers, like putting that power in the hands of the marketers so far, especially when they see other people doing it, they say, okay, I see what you're doing over there and your numbers are really popping. I guess I should probably get on board. Like, once they see it starting to work, it really does become addictive. So, by all means, don't want to shortchange the fact that it's a paradigm shift that requires people to learn and change. But really, once they do, we've seen just adoption really explode.
That's amazing. Tim, we'll have to leave it there. It's a great transformation on your end, and certainly, yeah, appreciate you sharing some of the insights and learnings from it. There's a few questions that came in. We'll answer offline, and everybody that's here or that registered will get a copy of this in their inbox tomorrow. Tim Roush, Senior Technical Product Manager with GoDaddy. Appreciate the time and insights today. Great conversation.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great one, y'all. Thanks.